branches. When you were growing up, if you had a sukkah, maybe you used some sort of palm fronds. We try to do that, but if not, we use this, which is bamboo. It's completely kosher. Okay, so there's the agricultural aspect of the holiday. Our ancestors were much more tuned in to agriculture than we tend to be. Because I don't know about you, but I get my food either handed to me or I go to a market. I don't really go to a farm. That's almost never happens. Once in a blue moon, I'm motivated and I go out to Santa Paula or something and I buy fresh strawberries. Or maybe I go to the farmer's market, but I'm still not at the farm. Our ancestors are at the farm. The other thing that distorts our view of agriculture is that because of airplanes and ships and trains, we can get fruit and vegetables from the wrong season now. So we don't even necessarily feel the seasons that much because stuff gets shipped in from the other side of the equator when it's the opposite season. But in ancient times, and not even that long ago, in Edith's family, not that long ago, right? You grew your own stuff. It had to be the right season. So our ancestors were dialed in. They were connected to the earth. They were lovers of the land. And they didn't want us to forget how special that was. So there's the agricultural aspect of the holiday that Ed referenced. There are two other aspects of the holiday, two other meanings. What are they? What is that? Right, we are sitting in Sukkah. What were you saying? Torah? Almost. You're getting to the Simchas Torah, so I'm going to put a pause on that. What is it? Matan Torah is associated with Simchat Torah more. So let's stick with that. But there is, if you're hinting at a historical aspect of the holiday, hi Frankie, come on in. I'm so glad you're here. Your hair looks fantastic. If you're talking about the historical aspect of the holiday, how does the Sukkah tie us into Jewish history? Right, our ancestors were traveling. Where were they traveling from? Egypt. Where were they traveling to? The land of Israel, the promised land, right? So when they were journeying, and it took them 40 years, they would travel for a few weeks, then they would make camp for a little while, then they would travel for a few more weeks. When I went from Egypt to Israel, I took a bus. It took like 5 hours. It was nothing. But for them, they were traveling on foot. And so obviously in the middle of the desert, they weren't going to build buildings, right? They weren't going to build houses. They were dwelling in temporary dwellings, in huts, or in tents of some sort. So the historical meaning of Sukkot is to connect us to our ancestors who spent so much of their time in temporary dwellings. They knew the life of the wanderer. I once taught a class years ago to kids actually called Shoes Under My Pillow. Shoes under my pillow. What I meant by that was, if you know that tomorrow you've got to keep going, right? My shoes are in my closet because I live where I live. But my ancestors' shoes might as well have been under their pillow if they even had pillows, because they were constantly on the journey. Some of the journeys were aspirational, like the journey from Egypt to Israel and along the way Mount Sinai. Some of the journeys were not aspirational. In some cases, they were running for their lives. But our ancestors knew the shoes under the pillow. So we dwell in the Sukkah to remember the fragility and how lucky we are if we have a permanent dwelling. So there's the agricultural, there's the historical, right? Of the fall harvest is the agricultural, the historical is the journey. There's one last aspect of the holiday, and I'm going to call it spiritual. What's the spiritual side of the holiday? What emotion or psychological, spiritual feeling do we want to be conjuring up on this holiday specifically? God protected us. What else? God is good to us, and what comes from that is what we call in Hebrew hoda'ah, which means gratitude, thanksgiving. As a matter of fact, this is this is like a Jewish trivia that a lot of people don't know. The American holiday of Thanksgiving, though it was founded by our Christian American ancestors, as it were, They base the holiday on the texts in the Torah for Sukkot, a fall agricultural festival where you express thanksgiving. That's why their holiday is actually called Thanksgiving. In our holiday, we have throughout the prayers Hoda'ah and Hodu, Hodu, Ladonai Ki Tov, right? It's all about thanksgiving. That's the spiritual aspect, the gratitude for what we have. So we are this temporary dwelling to be connected to the earth. By the way, you know, the schach, there's a rule about schach, the roof. It has to have more shade than sun so that you feel protected, but it can't be solid because you need to be able to see the stars at night through the sky. I built my sukkah, by the way, yesterday with my middle child, Bot, and at the end of it, I said, Bot, and my sukkah is like a tenth of the size of the sukkah. This sukkah is the largest sukkah I've ever been in my life. I love this sukkah. Mine is a little tiny one. It's 8 foot by 8 foot. And I said, Bot, now that we have the schach on the roof, do you feel that we have more shade than sun? And because I've raised kids that have chutzpah like me, my kid said, depends on the time of day, which was a good point because at certain times of the day, I have 3 walls. The sun comes right in from the side and there's basically zero shade. I said, okay, but my obligation has to do with the roof, so let's just stick to that. Any questions or comments about the 3 aspects of Sukkot? Okay, let's continue now on page 50 with the Baruch Hu. 50. Oh, Helen, go ahead. Oh, you're a step ahead of me. Helen hinted at what I'm going to talk about in a little while, which is the Lulav and the Etrog, right? Okay. We're going to, by the way, everyone's going to have an opportunity to shake. Just so long as you're willing to put on gloves, we're going to do that at the end. Page 50. Page 50. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. I'm going to face that way because it's east, on behalf of us all. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Let's read the English in the middle of page 51. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, whose word brings on the dusk of evening. Your wisdom opens the gates of dawn. Your understanding regulates time and seasons. The stars above follow their appointed rounds in response to your divine will. You create day and night. You alternate darkness and light. You remove the day and bring on the night. You separate one from the other. We call you Adonai of heavenly hosts. You are our living God. May you rule over us as you rule over nature. Praised are you, Adonai, who brings the evening dusk. Now let's take a deep breath as we prepare to say the Shema together. Page 54. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Olam. Shoshana, do you want to lead us in Ve'ahavta, please? Uvisharecha. Beautiful job. That was great. Thank you so much. On page 60, we find Michamocha. Michamocha was the song that they sang as Miriam led the dancing on the other side of the sea after they fled from Egypt. No one knows the melody that they sang, but many melodies have been created. And I like the upbeat ones because I can't imagine them going, Michamocha. I can't imagine that when they were celebrating their freedom. So I like ones like this. Michamocha ba'elim Adonai, Michamocha nedar b'kodesh, Noah tehilot, osei pele, Michamocha ba'elim Adonai, Michamocha nedar b'kodesh, Noah tehilot, osei pele. We continue on page 66. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabba, be'amad yivrach yirteh ve'amlich malchutei, b'chaye chol v'yomechon, u'v'chaye dechol bet Yisrael, b'hagala u'v'zman kahari v'meru. Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach, le'olam olol ve'almaya yitbarach, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipar v'yitromam v'yinaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiram be'alba v'yimeru. It's so beautiful to share back and forth. I love it. We haven't done that for a while. We're on page 99 for the silent Amidah. The Amidah is silent in the evening prayers, the Ma'ariv. So we take this time for silent prayer or reflection, or beginning with davening on the pages beginning with 99. In love have you given us, Adonai, our God, appointed times for gladness, festivals and seasons for joy. Even this festival of Sukkot, Zman Simchatenu, the season of our rejoicing. It is for us a holy convocation commemorating the Exodus from Egypt. Page 103. We can read together, our God and God of our ancestors, we recall and invoke the remembrance of our ancestors, the piety of their prayers for deliverance, the glory of Yerushalayim, your holy city, and the destiny of the entire household of Israel. As we seek your love and mercy, we pray for deliverance and for life, for happiness and for peace on this day of Sukkot. Remember us, O God, bless us with all that is good. Recall your promise of merciful redemption. Spare us, have compassion upon us, graciously save us. To you we lift our eyes and hope, for you are sovereign, are a gracious and merciful God. On page 106, you have Oseh Shalom. Oseh Shalom bimromav, Uyaseh Shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru imru amen. Ya'aseh Shalom, Ya'aseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. I can hear you. Ya'aseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Page 114. We have a special Kiddush melody, which is different from Shabbat. Feel free to follow along if you know it, and feel free to follow along if you don't know it. I'm a big fan of Yalala, and I'm a big fan. Anything that makes our voices move, there's no wrong way to pray. There's no wrong way. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol aham veromemanu mikol lashon vekidshanu b'mitzvotav vatiten lanu Adonai Eloheinu be'ahava modim lesimcha chagim uzmanim lesason et yom chag hasukot hazeh zman simchatenu, a time of our rejoicing. Mikra Kodesh Zecher L'Tziat Mitzrayim Kivanu V'acharta Ve'otanu Kidashta Mikol Hamim Umoadei Kodshecha B'simcha Usason Hinchaltanu Baruch Atah Adonai Mekadesh Yisrael V'hazmanim Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Shehecheyanu V'kiyamanu Vehigianu lahazman. Wow, you sound like a choir. Amen. That means blessed are you, God, ruler of the universe, for instilling us with life in the first place, for keeping us going and bringing us this sacred moment in time. Now, someone asked about the blessing you say. Rona, I think it was you. What's the blessing you say when you enter the sukkah, right? The blessing for the mitzvah. You're doing a mitzvah right now. The mitzvah is leishev basukkah, right? Which means what, Helen? To sit in the sukkah. Some people make it literal, like to sit in the sukkah. Other people call it to dwell. It's a fancier way to translate it. That's if you're really, are you planning to sleep in the sukkah tonight? No. I would, except for my extreme fear of cats and raccoons. I'm just too scared. I once slept in my sukkah with my kid many, many years ago, and I heard scratching on the outside, and then in jumped a cat and just like landed, and I thought, what other friends have you with you? And I just ran in the house. It was very, very scaredy cat of me. No, but the mitzvah is what you're doing right now. And the blessing is on the bottom of 114. Repeat after me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav Vetzivanu Leishev Basukkah. It means, praise are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who makes our life holy through mitzvahs and ordain that we dwell in the sukkah. And we all say, Amen. So we talked about the 3 layers of meaning of Sukkot, right? We talked about the agricultural meaning, that it's the fall harvest. We talked about the historical significance of us being sojourners and journeyers and people who had to sometimes run with shoes under our pillow. We talked about the spiritual aspect of gratitude, having an attitude of gratitude. Aside from that, it's right to do that because we're so lucky. We're just so lucky. As human beings, we're fortunate that there is the nature around us, but we in particular who don't have to worry about our next meal, we don't have to worry that if it rains this week, we're going to be freezing cold. We're very, very fortunate. And that's the spiritual aspect of gratitude. There's, in addition to those 3 aspects of Sukkot, there's a ritual that we do. We sit in the Sukkah, but there's also a ritual involving shaking the Lulav and Etrog, In my original congregation, when I was first ordained, my senior rabbi would invite every year at Sukkot Native Americans to talk about, Native Americans, American Indians, right? To talk about their relationship with the earth and the land. Because there's a certain, let's say, romanticism that we have that somehow Native Americans are more connected. Our ancestors were very connected, and they wanted us to be connected too. And so I sometimes channel my inner Native American, which shouldn't be necessary, because really what I should be channeling is my inner Jew. But I just try to get into that mindset when I lift up these three species, they call them species, with this one, and I wave them around north, south, east, west. What are you saying, Frankie? What? Yes, yes. How do you say this? Etrog. Oh, if you're Yiddish speaking, you'd say esrog, right? I'm sure some of you say it that way. Etrog or esrog. It depends if you're doing the soft or hard tough, the letter tough. Anyone, I only found this out a few years ago. Anyone know how to say etrog in English? How do you know that, Shirley? That's right. You are just smart. Shirley knew it. It's a citron, which makes perfect sense because it's a citrus, right? Citron is spelled C-I-T-R-O-N. The reason I found this out is in my former congregation, there was a family by the last name of Citron. And I said, that's such an interesting name. What is it? They said, they basically said, you silly goose, it's an etrog. I said, oh, that's how you say etrog in English? Anyway, so we hold these together. So this is what I want to talk about for a moment with you. The symbolism of the etrog and lulav. So I have it connected and I have it disconnected. So here's an unassembled lulav. This is from what tree? It's a palm tree, right? Ow, I always poke myself. It's a palm tree, right? And we shake it. What part of the human body is it designed to remind us of? The spine, right? That we should be upright. Some of you may know, when you put a mezuzah up in a house? So there are two traditions that you can choose from. When you put a mezuzah in your doorway, you can do it up and down like this, or you can do it tilted like that, right? Mine's tilted. I think most of the ones here are tilted. Tilted is if you want to say humble, right? Like you bow before God. But there's also a tradition that some people use where they put their mezuzah up and down to talk about being upright, like a lulav, like having an upright spine, which is symbolic of being a person with integrity, a person who's honest and true, who you can trust, who lives their life in such a way that somehow you just trust them. Okay, so then we've got the Myrtle. Myrtle used to be a popular name in the United States for your generation. Did anybody here know a Myrtle when you were growing up? If you grew up in the U.S.? Myrtle. So the myrtle leaves are supposed to be shaped like a human eye. I'm going to come around with it in a second, like a human eye. Why would we have a plant that looks like a human eye? Because we should open our eyes and take in the beauty around us, and we should see goodness first. People are innocent until proven guilty, so it's looking through a certain lens, a certain frame of mind, a certain eye. Then you've got the willow. Let me pull that one out of the bag here. The willow plant. The willow is supposed to look like human lips. Lips, yeah, because the words that come out of our mouths are very, very, very powerful. We can say words that are destructive and hurt others, and we can say words that really build up other people and lift them up. And so the power of our mouths and our lips is a very, very important aspect. One of the rabbis said there's a reason that we have two ears but only one mouth, right? To listen, double of our speak, and when we speak, to really be intentional and loving and kind. We all know that we've said things that we regret, and we regretted it because it hurt other people. So every day we make choices, and we want to be reminded to make good choices with what we do with our mouths. And finally, while it doesn't exactly look like it, I don't know why they say this, but it kind of makes sense spiritually, the etrog is supposed to remind us of what body part? That's right. Shirley, you're going to get an A+ on the exam. It's supposed to be like our heart. I know it's not red, but it is odd shaped. And the heart is strangely shaped. The real heart, not the cartoon symmetrical heart, but a heart is odd-shaped. Because nothing matters more than love. We can study a lot of Torah. We can learn answers to many, many questions about how to be a good Jew and what are the rules and what are the blessings, and we can memorize the prayers, and none of it matters if we are not loving in our lives. The most important thing is to be loving and kind. So these four symbols get brought together like this. Wait, hold on 1 second, Helen. Right? You actually make the blessing like that, then you turn it, and then we shake it, right? So we hold the four together, the pitom, which we have to be careful not to break, otherwise not kosher. We make the blessing with it like this, then we go like that. And we shake it in every direction. Again, I wouldn't worry about all the rules. I do forward, right, back, left, looking up, looking down, but there are all kinds of traditions. There's no wrong way. Helen, what did you want to say? Wait, hold on. Okay, that's great. Wait, hold on 1 second, Frankie. Helen just told me a story I've never heard before. Her brother broke the pitom, right? Is that what I understand? So her brother accidentally broke that special part at the end. So he ran in the he ran in the house and he glued it back on. Did anybody notice? Did it work? That's a great story. You know what? Now I want to write a children's story. Wouldn't that make a good children's book? Like the story of the broken pitom? Oh, I'm so excited. Frankie, you wanted to say something. So Frankie was telling about sitting in her sukkah on a Saturday night with all the family there and lots of people bringing different things. By the way, how many of you have memories of sitting in a sukkah in your past? Yeah? How many went to other people's houses and sat in the sukkah? Yeah, I did that too. Okay. You know, there's a tradition, it's called ushpizin. Anyone ever heard of it? It's a Yiddish word. The tradition is that we invite guests into our sukkah. And by the way, I just want to be completely clear. This is your sukkah, and I'm your guest. This is your sukkah. You live here. And I want to thank you for inviting me into your sukkah, which is the nicest sukkah I've ever seen. Ushpizin is the idea that we invite guests into the sukkah, but we can invite them physically, okay? And we can invite them spiritually. So there's a tradition, I don't know if you can see them right now, but Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, Ruth, and Esther, they're all in here with us. So my question for you is, if you could invite anyone into this sukkah, anyone, use your imagination, alive, dead, Jewish, not Jewish, biblical, modern history, someone in your family, if you could invite anyone, who would you invite into our sukkah today? Frankie? Ah, your husband. You didn't invite me? Thank you, because I kind of crashed your party without asking, so thanks for inviting me. Your mom and dad. Your father? You would invite your grandfather? Your brothers and sisters? Your sister Suzanne, thank you. Thank you for that. I bet we'd all have a lot of our family members. Some people will be like, you know what, not my family. And that's okay too. What about any historical figures or biblical? If you could have any person, could be someone famous. Moses. Shirley wants Moses. Boom, he's here. Who else? Eleanor Roosevelt. Eleanor Roosevelt has one of my favorite quotes, which I'll tell you in a second. Golda Meir for sure. Well, she's right back there. Yes. Who else?
My grandparents who I never met.
Your grandparents who you never met. Yeah, that's beautiful. What's that? President Biden, that would be very interesting. That'd be very interesting. Does staff have anyone they would invite? Oh, Ed, did you want to invite someone? Isaac, nice, nice. I bet we could say quite a bit about why. Yeah, go ahead. I can't hear you. Can you be a tiny bit louder? Her 3.5-year-old great-granddaughter. Yeah, that would be. You know who I want to invite? My descendants that don't exist yet. I want to invite my great-great-grandchildren. Wouldn't that be neat? That would be kind of cool, right?
My great-grand twins.
Your great-grand twins, right. Go ahead. Great-great. How many of you would invite your grandchildren or great-grandchildren if you have them? Yeah, for sure, for sure. So I'm going to end with the Eleanor Roosevelt quote that I love, because it has to do with the discussion we had about the lips, right? Eleanor Roosevelt said that there's 3 kinds of conversations that people have. You can talk about other people. That's the lowest level. That's basically gossip, right? You can talk about events, what's going on. It's neutral. Or she says you can talk about ideas. And that's the highest level of discourse, which is what we've been doing now. So thank you all for that. We made Kiddush, right? Yes, we did that. Okay, so, yeah. Thank you so much for that. People that we don't know who don't have food, we'd love to invite them in. That would be great. Thank you for that. That really puts things in perspective and teaches us the empathy that we need, especially for this season. Okay, what we're going to do now is, for anybody who wants to, everyone will have an opportunity to shake the Lulav and Etrog. Okay? We have to do it with gloves, so please help us with that. So we're going to ask the staff to first collect the prayer books, and then our hands will be available. It's going to go a little bit slowly, so we don't want to rush anybody. So if you could be patient, I'd really appreciate it. And I'm going to make the blessing once, but if you want to make it again when I bring it around to you, you're welcome to, okay? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitotav v'tzivanu al netilat lulav. Okay, so we're going to give our books back, and we're going to put on gloves, and I'll come around and bring the Lulav and Etrog to you. Anybody else have any questions or comments before I do that? Yes? Okay, you want me to make that point? Okay, there are many traditions of how you shake it. I go in front, to the right, behind, to the left, looking up, which is my favorite, and looking down. But there's so many different traditions, there's no wrong way, so don't worry. But the idea is all around that we're connecting to. Look, the fact of the matter is there are going to be people shaking the Lulav and Etrog this week everywhere in the world, not only throughout Los Angeles, throughout California, but all over America, South America, North America, Canada, Europe, Israel, Australia, South Africa, everywhere. I have a very close friend who lives in South Africa. I said, that must be strange. You guys are celebrating the fall festival in spring, right? Because it's the other side of the world.
Do they celebrate it in spring? No, they celebrate in the fall. Where's the hand sanitizer? Oh, bring it. Can you bring it? Do you want to? What did you say?